crowd, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. In the evening today, exit polls predicted results of the assembly elections held in Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Uttarakhand, Goa and Manipur. The most keenly watched state was Uttar Pradesh, where the Samajwadi Party and the Congress formed a strong alliance. The Bharatiya Janata Party was buoyed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's hyper campaign, and Mayawati's Bahujan Samaj Party worked very hard but quietly. The assembly elections are being billed as a litmus test for Prime Minister Modi, as the BJP largely banked on his popularity in its bid for power, especially in the crucial state of Uttar Pradesh, where it has been out of government for 15 years. Still, how often are exit polls correct? Turns out the accuracy of such polls is mixed. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze as to how reliable exit polls really are. Joining me on the program today are Vipul Mudgal, Director of Common Cause, Parsa Venkateshwar Jr., Senior Journalist, Mathew V., Election Researcher, and Maneesh Chhibber, Chief of Bureau, Indian Express. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Vipul, I'd like to start with you, of course. Before we get into how reliable really exit polls are, let's talk about the exit polls, what we've seen today. Are you surprised by, by the numbers that have been thrown out, or do you believe that, it's on expected lines?
No, I take it with a pinch of salt, because you see, there are many variables which are possible, particularly in a state like Uttar Pradesh, because every phase has had a very distinct kind of complexion, and that is why it is very difficult to call. I mean, especially if the difference between two parties in vote share is of 32% and 34%, then it's actually very difficult to call. That's part one. The second part is that exit polls anywhere in the world should not go wrong, provided, because people don't have to really.
But they tend to go wrong more often than not.
They are going wrong now consistently. I think after a very long history, you had Brexit wrong, you had UK 2015 wrong, and even Trump, the way things got it wrong. So a lot of them got wrong. So I think the only reason for that is that people are not telling the truth. They're not. It's a different generation. People have seen enough number of these things. Now they don't want to answer. But in places like Uttar Pradesh, very often the most vulnerable people do not want to reveal their, their preferences. And the same thing applies to minorities who say, why do I get into all this? So I'm not giving you, or I'm giving you the reply that you want to hear. So those are the pitfalls, but I would still say that there is no reason why a good, well-conducted exit poll should give you kind of wrong results.
Indeed. Parsa, in a state, in a country where you have elections all around the year. In fact, say for instance, the Punjab election now, it concluded a month ago. I mean, you wait for a whole month and you have exit polls after a whole month where, the election results will be declared in just 36 hours from now. So, I mean, do these exit polls, do they mean anything at this point in time?
I think it's some sort of an academic exercise and also perhaps a money-making business for these polling agencies, which is legitimate. I wouldn't really fault them for taking up the exercise. And the problems with exit poll are real in India, not only with exit poll, with any social survey also. It's very difficult to capture the accurate and the real picture, because given the variations. But sometimes you do get the big picture right. Sometimes you can sense it. It's some sort of a straw poll which individual reporters can sense it, and you do it in a larger scale and try to confirm or validate it through a poll survey, like the exit poll. But what I feel is sometimes you can miss it altogether. I mean, because the silent voter is different. But it looks like that most of the polls seem to point to a certain trend. There would be variations on come Saturday, but I think they are positing a certain trend.
Yeah, so the trend is at least accurate, is what you're saying.
Yeah, trend seems to be believable, plausible. I wouldn't say accurate, but plausible.
Indeed. Maneesh Chhibber, in a state like Punjab, for instance, where the point that I was raising earlier, the elections concluded 1 month ago. If you had the exit polls immediately after the elections in Punjab, would they have had an impact, say, for instance, in eastern Uttar Pradesh?
Yes and no. The reason I say yes, is because, Bharatiya Janata Party was in alliance in the state, in Punjab, and if word had gotten out that they were losing power by way of an exit poll, it might have had some kind of impact in the other states, because in our country, elections do tend to have, in one state does have some kind of ripple effect in the other states. And why I say no is because people in Punjab, they vote on different kind of arithmetic than people say in Uttarakhand or in UP. People living in fact, during my travel in Punjab, what I also saw this time, and I've seen it earlier also, is that people in the three regions of Punjab themselves don't, vote along the same lines. So if people living in the same state are not voting according to a set pattern, it is sort of difficult to see or, visualize the same people living in, let's say, eastern or western UP voting according to how people voted or tended to vote in Punjab.
Indeed. Mathew, I'd like to bring you in now and let's talk about some of the methodology that is used really to conduct some of these exit polls. Do you believe that it is the right methodology that is being in use, or something else needs to be done?
Well, exit polls usually there is a very short questionnaire. You are asked who did you vote for in the previous election, and then you are asked who are you going to vote for, who have you voted for today, and name and number, and you are supposed to fold the paper and drop it in a ballot box. Usually it is far more robust than an opinion poll, because the assumption that is being made is that people will not lie once they come out of the booth, and there is a sense of that people will not their information will not be divulged outside.
True.
So I feel that a well designed and a robust exit poll questionnaire, I think it should give the correct
So
right result.
what is the sample size do some of these agencies really look at?
About 500 to 1,000 a constituency,
Okay.
per assembly constituency. So in the UP context, we are talking about 4 lakh, average 3.5 lakh to 4 lakh. So we are looking at 500 to 1,000, covering about 20 booths. In about 400 out of 400, 20 out of 400.
So just these sheer numbers, Vipul, it's confusing, isn't it?
It may not capture all castes,
True,
it may not
true,
capture all religions, it may not capture all income groups, it may not capture the urban-rural divide. So to that extent, yes, but it is extremely expensive, and if people who do exit polls, they not only have to pay for exit poll day, they have to pay the field investigators one day before, one day after. So 3 days. So it's not an easy exercise.
Time and again, every time we have an election, we see editors, anchors, newsmakers go out, stick their necks on the line, and then go out and predict an election. And then come counting day, some of them have to retract their statements, issue apologies.
Wrong on counting day.
Yes, they get it wrong on counting day. Is this exercise really fruitful? Is this exercise really needed, Vipul?
You see, we are talking at a time when big data is the biggest story. Big data, everybody is looking at big data. And let's forget for the time being, we are talking about population of Uttar Pradesh, a large number of people. You think about, the weather forecast, 100 years rainfall figures in different months, different seasons and things like that. You put in all kinds of filters, root mean square deviations and things like that. You do computational neurology in which you have millions of factors. So what you do is you have to get your randomization right. Number two, you have to understand that the model should be representative. So once you've done, and the art of doing it lies in the robustness of the questionnaire that you prepare. You can ask stupid questions, leading questions, which will give wrong answers, which will encourage somebody to hide the information. But you can also ask candid questions in a very scientific way. So representation, and questionnaire and the randomness, etc. If all those get right, I think this is the time of big data, and we should not lose faith in exit poll. The only thing is that the way we are doing, the way new agencies are springing up every now and then, every political party, every candidate wants an exit poll to be conducted, and conducted very fast, and take money and do it right now. I think that's fly-by-wire kind of agencies, fly-by-night agencies.
Is that what it is, Matthew? Just a business now, just try and get the numbers out there as soon as possible so that they are lapped up by the television channels and then put out to an audience who's just waiting to consume these figures.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are a large number of fly-by-night operators who give genuine pollsters a bad name, and that's true. So I can't deny that.
Okay, fair enough. Parsa, it again comes back to my moot question as to whether these exit polls really are, reliable today. Can we go out and say that, this is something that we can expect? I'm sure that this is right, that this pollster is predicting at this moment.
It's let's accept the inherent problem with any poll survey in this country, exit poll or otherwise. It's a statistical teaser. What is the kind of sample size you require in a country like India to be able to say, okay, this is accurate enough? The other thing is the statistical skill of the persons who are conducting the poll and interpreting the data. Your extrapolation should be done most intelligently. And statistics is all about intelligent extrapolation, that you must be able to sort of guess right from the limited data available and say, okay, this looks like the major trend. Then you will get it right. So it's a skillful teaser, I think, and it should be continued in the future, and perhaps more talented people, more people with a greater training in statistics should be coming into the game rather than a general social survey. It's sending out a questionnaire and getting the answers. That would not be sufficient. And as Mathew has pointed out, here it's a very direct thing. After the poll is over, you are just asking whom did you vote for, and that is the end of the matter. It is a direct yes or no question. Yes, there will be people who would evade that, and there might be people who would even give inaccurate answers in trying not to divulge their preferences. But I think it's an exercise worth doing, and it's an exercise which is academically very, very challenging and also satisfying.
Indeed.
If you are a pure statistician.
Indeed. It is extremely satisfying for us. Sure.
When it comes to conversion of numbers into seats, that is where all your cerebral energy is required, and that is where people actually go wrong also. But the numbers you can get right, but let us not forget, in a position like, say, some phases of Uttar Pradesh, where 0.5% of the votes can make a difference of as many as 20 seats. So that is where all your skill lies, and it will not go by only numbers. You will have to apply whole lot of other things. You should be able to predict only when you have your feet to the ground. You'll be able to smell the people you are talking about. You should know a lot more than just numbers.
Indeed. One at a time, please. Yes.
Keeping in mind the Uttar Pradesh context, what the exit polls might have done or not done, it looks like, everybody is assuming that though it was a three-cornered contest, the real contestants were only two, and the votes and one of the three got marginalized, and that is why it looks like one party is gaining most. It's almost like a bipolar contest,
Sure.
So is that a simplification, or is it really happening? We do not.
Is it reality? That is something that we do not know at this point in time. Yes, Matthew. You want
So
to
in
make
both Punjab and UP, there were three-cornered contests, and usually what happens in a three-cornered contest is one of the three is out of the race, and then it's a direct fight between two parties. So in UP, by and large, the assessment from most journalists and most pollsters is the fight is between the Alliance and the BJP. And in Punjab, the fight is between Aam Aadmi Party and Congress.
Indeed. Before I get to, what are the error margins and all that, that is something that I want to address as well. Let me get in Maneesh Chhibber as well. Maneesh, something that Vipul raised earlier about, the fact that earlier the pollsters used to get it right. We've seen in the past that exit polls were predicted accurately, but of late, over the last 5 or 6 years, of course, or even more recently as the last 1 year, we've seen that pollsters getting it extremely wrong. What seems to have changed over these years?
Number one, I don't think there is, most of our pollsters have any fixed formula. They are not using the big data, as somebody pointed out. And also, a lot of these pollsters, you have already said that they are fly-by-night operators who don't understand what psephology is or what polling is about. Just to give you a fair idea, I was standing outside a booth in Punjab in this election, and you know, I don't have a vote in Punjab. And somebody, young girl, walked up to me, "Aapne sir vote de diya?" So, you know, I also humored her and said, हाँ दे दिया है. So just trying to understand what all this, and she tells me, अच्छा सर आपसे थोड़े से सवाल पूछने हैं. You know, I don't even have a vote. So the least that is expected is for them to, you know, check whether I actually have a vote in that area. And also, you know, in India is unlike any other democracy you'll come across because of the sheer size of numbers. We have different kind of people living every 200 kilometers, even 50 kilometers, a different you know, mindset at work. And till we sort out all these issues, you know, feed them into some big huge monster computer and, you know, come up with the right questions, only then will we be able to get the right answers. Unfortunately, what is happening is that you know, these people, I don't think you know, even our television which is backing most of these exit polls, they have the kind of resources that are required, you know, financial resources and other resources that are required to get you know, a sample size of the kind that is required for a state like UP, you know, and a state like Punjab, which is, you know, which has 3 areas which are as different as, you know, from Majha, if you travel into Doaba, the dialect is completely different. There are completely different mindset. So I don't think we have the kind of money that is required to go into these things.
You know, Mathew, I want to understand, you know, how much really does this whole exercise cost? And it's just cost is one factor, of course. I mean, I don't want an exact figure, but I mean, does it cost a lot of money? What is it that goes into it? And is it, are these pollsters just racing against, you know, is just money a factor, or are they also racing against time?
Both. It is extremely expensive. Second, usually the most accurate ones are the ones which are commissioned by political parties. Media channels which commission them only do about 10% of the total number of seats in the assembly. So, you know, then they have to apply various permutations and combinations to extrapolate that data. Second, like many of one of the panelists also said, there may be a very high intelligence quotient, but political quotient may be low. So whether they can interpret that data, I'm not too sure.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So we need expert statisticians to really interpret
Not just
this data.
statisticians, you need people with political quotient.
Absolutely correct.
Sure. You know, going forward, Vipul, so as to ensure that we get these exit polls right, what really needs to be done to ensure that, you know, the faith in the common audience and in the public is restored as far as some of these polls are concerned?
Can I just butt in for a minute? Earlier, say 10 years ago, most of these investigators were hardly paid. You know, they were paid just 400 or 500 rupees. They were asked to travel in, you know, roadways, buses, and they actually were very diligent and hardworking. The current crop of people are extremely unwilling to work. They want a very high salary. I mean, and there is a lot of arrogance. There is a lot of ignorance. So these are the challenges that, you know, people on this side face.
No, absolutely.
Sure. Very difficult to work with these people.
There's no doubt about it. No,
Sure.
Mathew, you're absolutely right. My point is that, you see, once you build systems, say for instance, when you say that somebody goes into a larger village, say about population of 25,000 or 15,000, now a team goes and you have to interview only about 40 people, and you meet 40 people at just one square. So, and you immediately get those filled and you come back. Now, what happens is that there are certain kind of people who come forward who are edgy, who are more, you know, curious, who are more comfortable with things, and it turns out that they happen to be also upper caste, upper class, at least dominant caste of that village. So, the right thing would be, you know, hypothetically also, that you divide your team into 4, let them go to 4 different parts, and maybe one team to the center of the village, and then divide, you know, 10 kind of questionnaires each in these 5 parts. So even there things can go wrong. So what happens is, that is why, you know, you have to randomize, and representativeness has to be very.
But do we have the bandwidth to do something like this?
You can actually. It's not money. No, it's actually the point is, you know, what is it juxtaposed against? You know, I have conducted opinion polls on behalf of a newspaper, where a company said to me that, oh, you want to do rural India also? No problem, we will include rural India, it will come to you tomorrow morning. I said, how is that possible? And I realized, I said, I want to see your list. And I realized that rural India became Kharad from Chandigarh, Nazafgarh from Delhi, you know, some outskirts of Ghaziabad. So they, you know, that's not rural India. You have
Sure.
so actually they have to be scientific and they have to do things if they are doing. And politicians, by the way, when they get surveys done in their constituencies, they are very tough customers. They want you to go to every booth. They don't mind spending money. So at times they get right, but when television channels spend money, they outsource it and they wait for kind of the magic bullet to come.
Political parties which commission surveys usually get it right, usually.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. You know, Parsa, what's the way forward really? I mean, you're of the opinion that exit polls should stay and we need exit polls, but we need to ensure that they are far more accurate. What do we do in the near future to make them accurate?
You know, one more thing which we have not talked about is the cultural biases or inhibitions, not just of the pollsters but of the people. Whether they are willing to speak out, whether they speak their mind or not. You know, it's been a big problem, especially in rural India, where you cannot really get the truth out of the people because they are very, very cautious, suspicious of strangers, and they would not really speak out of what is on their mind. So there has to be some other ways of looking at the society, their way of thinking and how they express. They express most indirectly their views and opinions. So someone with, that's where the point becomes necessary, that it's not enough to have statistical ability, but you need to have political understanding. That means you need to understand the social and cultural aspects of
Sure.
the people. How do they react? How do they express their views? And each region has its own way. And it's a difficult task, but I think we need to develop these skills, because at the end of the day we need social statistics, which is a very weak point in this country. We really do not know what are the trends, what are the profiles and how the society goes, and which is something which we have to move towards, and we have to spend a lot of money and time. It's
Indeed.
not just money.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Maneesh, Chhibber, is targeted surveying the way forward, or do you believe that this random kind of surveying that several of these pollsters do, is that the right way to go about it? Well, it seems to have lost the line there with
The
Maneesh.
problem is not with random. You see, random is just a style. You know, you can have a snowballing method of interviewing, for instance, which means that you talk to Mr. X and he gives you the contact of Mr. Y and Z. You go and talk to them. You know, there are various ways. There can be you know, focus group discussions in which you get, if there is very small number of people you are talking to, say about 30, 40, then you get representatives, say editors of 20 newspapers in one particular language, get them to speak and check boxes and things like that. So there are various methods. But the problem is that, you know, there are intelligent ways and stupid ways of doing everything.
Sure, indeed, indeed. Okay, I've got about 1 minute left on the program, so I'd like to get quick final comments from both my other guests too here. Parsa, your quick closing comments on the program.
Exit polls should stay, and it is not for their immediate use, but over a period of time we get a political profile of the states, of the people, parties and the voters, which is very, very essential.
Indeed.
It's a long-term gain.
It is a long-term gain, and that's something that we require at this point in time. Mathew, your final
The
closing
polls
comments?
will continue to improve, and right now, unfortunately, they are only seen for the entertainment value, but I'm sure it will soon be educating as well.
That's a positive thought, that they're going to continue to, to do well. Before I get your closing comment, Vipul, Maneesh Chhibber too has joined us on the program. His line is connected now. Maneesh, your closing comments on the program.
You know, I think exit polls are a very good idea, but you need to have the right kind of resources for them to succeed, and also the right kind of people backing them. What is happening right now is that most of the people who are conducting these, you cannot go by what they are telling you because of their vested interests. And I also think that a lot of money needs to be pumped into the system to improve the kind of things that they deliver.
Indeed. All right. Vipul, your
I think
closest
there's some
remarks.
kind of transparency required in the whole sector. Suddenly it has become a sector. There are a large number of players in it. So it is in their interest that they get together, they form the norms for themselves. What kind of transparency of methodology is required? You at least, once the survey is over, you've made it public, at least then you declare, you put your methodology on your public domain or on your website. You know, similarly, there is also some kind of norms required for the sector, that thou shalt not, you know, this is the red line you will not cross.
Indeed, indeed. All right, on that note, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Vipul, Mudgal, Parsa, Venkateshwar Rao Jr., Mathew, V and Maneesh Chhibber. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. See you again next time.